How important is this message today about preserving democracy when people are complaining more about prices at home than geopolitics?
Well, first of all, how people feel is really important, and the concerns that people have about their daily lives are always critical, and the president understands that, knows that, and is addressing those issues. But democracy is a paramount issue, and I could not think of a more poignant place for the president to be. I want to thank you for recognizing Andrew Higgins. Andrew Higgins is a New Orleanian. He designed the boats that those brave men and women were in when they stormed the beaches of Normandy. I had the great pleasure 20 years ago as lieutenant governor of representing the state of Louisiana on that very same spot when President Bush and the French President Jacques Chirac were there. And it's a very, very, very moving day. It stops you in your tracks because it puts you in the place where you can actually visualize these 73,000 young men and women from 12 countries, of course, most of whom were from the United States, storming those beaches and scaling that 100-yard wall, which is just mind-boggling. And, of course, when you're there, you see the grave sites. There are about 10,000 of them there, and your heart just is rended. And you have to think about the price that they were willing to pay to save democracy. So this is an event not just for the United States, but for the world. And, of course, because America is an indispensable nation, because we are the ones who actually keep peace in the world through NATO with our allies, it was critically important for the president to be front and center, as he was today, as many of our other presidents were, and spoke to the issue of the sacrifice that we have to make and how vigilant we have to be to protect our democracy, which is very strong, but is very fragile as well, especially if you don't show up when it's being threatened.
I was struck by words from Mitch McConnell today. Mitch Landrieu, writing in the New York Times in an opinion piece, he wrote, "It should not take another catastrophic attack like Pearl Harbor to wake today's isolationists from the delusion that regional conflicts have no consequences for the world's most powerful and prosperous nation." What does it tell us? What does it tell you as a Democrat when essentially Joe Biden is channeling the message from the old line Republican Party? He's on the same page as Mitch McConnell today.
Well, what it tells you is that there are issues that rise above partisan politics, and Joe Biden has always been this kind of guy. The presidency requires somebody that has great character, great wisdom, great moral courage, and great physical courage. And, of course, President Biden understands the historical significance of standing on the shoulders of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, General Eisenhower, who you know was the supreme commander of those Allied forces on that day, and later the President of the United States. And Mitch McConnell, along with another of other Republicans who remember the Republican Party of a couple of years ago, who understand that in order for the world to have peace, America has to stand strong, that the country unites around us, which is why NATO is so important. And I think Senator McConnell and Senator Biden, who I gather was 2 years old when this historic event took place in 1944, lived through the benefits that they got from those young men and women who stormed those beaches and made the ultimate sacrifice. So I was really moved by the president's speech. He said that every generation must preserve and defend freedom because freedom isn't free. And if it goes unchecked, tyranny is born of the blood of the young and the brave. And I think Mitch McConnell was making the point that let's not get there again, folks. Let's not lose and forget. We always have to remember why we were there and what we were fighting for, so we don't step towards a lot of the authoritarian concerns that people are having now across the world, and, by the way, on soil in America.
Well, you're starting to sound like Ronald Reagan, Mitch Landrieu. I don't know what's going on around here, but I say that only half joking. The White House and the campaign have not made a secret that Joe Biden will channel Ronald Reagan and echo the speech that he made, the boys of Pointe du Hoc, when he goes to that very location tomorrow.
Well, listen, you're not seeing anything new from Joe Biden that you haven't seen. People may have forgotten that Joe Biden and John McCain were very dear friends, and there were a generation of leaders that have manifest in the Mitt Romneys of the world, the Joe Bidens of the world, Mitch McConnell, as you said, and John McCain. These guys across partisan politics. When you got off of our shore, they never fought about America because we were a united front. So Joe Biden is channeling not just Ronald Reagan, but FDR and all of the other presidents that stood tall against autocracy and tyranny across the world. That is America's calling card. And the president was saying today, listen, we are confronting these dangers not only abroad with the incredible incursion that Putin has exercised in Ukraine, which we have to fight back very hard, to the challenges that we're having to democratic institutions in the United States of America. If you want to be strong at home, you got to be strong abroad. And if you want to be strong abroad, you got to be strong at home. These are the fruits of the same tree. And you don't want them to be poisonous fruits of a dead tree. You want them to be vibrant. And Joe Biden spoke to that issue that has coursed through American history since the beginning of our time.
Mitch, Andrew Higgins was a businessman. If he hadn't created the Higgins boat, we would never have been able to land on a beach in World War II, not just Normandy, but all the islands in the Pacific. That reminds us of the innovation that's required at a time like this. It requires more than politics, doesn't it?
Well, I think that's right. I think that the story, and I'm sure historians will correct this, was that FDR went to a lot of the business folks who weren't happy with him at the time because of his policies, and he said, look, I need you to make 50,000, X. And they said, oh, we can only make 2. And he was like, no, I need 50. And so what you saw then was the federal government working with the business community and entrepreneurs like Andrew Higgins. Everybody in the country rallied around the cause of freedom, and America stood tall when it counted. And we're going to do that again because tyranny never goes away. It never goes to sleep. Somebody's got to stand on the wall, and America has always done this. And I thought that the president did a great job today reflecting the soul of America to the rest of the world and let them know that we will always be there standing on that wall with them.